On this week's Political Figure episode, Issa guy I wouldn't trust with my car keys or my congressional district, Darrell Issa. Darrell Edward Issa was the second of 6 children born to horny parents on November 1st, 1953 in Cleveland, Ohio. To be fair, there probably wasn't much else to do in Cleveland but make babies. He grew up in the burbs, and at the age of 17, he dropped out of high school and joined the Army, where his job became explosive ordnance disposal, which is just making bombs not blow up. Later, when he'd run for office, he'd brag about having the responsibility of sweeping the stadium before the World Series so Richard Nixon could attend. That was bullshit. Richard Nixon never went to the World Series. His wife, however, did attend one of the games where she threw out the first pitch. However, Darrell wouldn't keep that job for long because he sucked at it so bad, he got unsatisfactory ratings and job performance repeatedly and was demoted to the supply depot. Around the same time, Darrell allegedly stole one of his fellow service members' cars from base, and well, after being confronted about it, the car was later found abandoned on the turnpike. Darrell was never charged. It did seem like the beginning of a trend for delinquent Darrell, because the next year, shortly after being discharged from the military, he was arrested and charged with stealing a Maserati, although those charges also ended up getting dropped. And then later that year, he was arrested, charged, and convicted for illegally carrying a concealed firearm. After this, Issa would go on to get a degree in business administration from Kent State, as well as rejoining the Army Reserves. And then in 1979, he was charged with grand theft auto again, this time for selling his Mercedes sedan to a dealership and then reporting it stolen and trying to get the insurance money. But that case was also dropped after he bought the car back and said it was all just a big misunderstanding. Man, Darrell's got a longer list of grand theft auto than Rockstar. The year after that, he got in a car crash, left the scene before the police showed up, and then was sued by the other motorists for $20,000, which they settled out of court. It's cold and snowing out now, so I'm inside. After college, Issa took his frauds and scams to the business world. Here, he magically managed to come up with $60,000 that he said he borrowed mostly from friends and sold a few vehicles, wonder where he got those, to invest in a company called Quantum Enterprises. One of Quantum's customers, a manufacturer of car alarms called Steel Stoppers, was in a tight spot and needed a loan. So Issa, like Pesterio Vargas, was in the mood to scam just because he can. He gave Steel Stoppers founder Joey Adkins $60,000, we also don't know where he got, as a loan. In the very first payment Adkins missed, Issa foreclosed upon him, stealing Steel Stoppers. A little bit of irony there. And then after taking control of Steel Stoppers, he fired one of the employees named Jack France by allegedly threatening him with a gun. Apparently, after acquiring Steel Stoppers, Issa did some more light insurance fraud, allegedly, by burning down some warehouses and office buildings at Steel Stoppers. Allegedly. He was once again never convicted of the insurance fraud, but both the fire marshal and the insurance company were like, yeah, he definitely just poured gasoline in here in random places and lit it on fire. We can tell these things by the way they burn. And the insurance company originally would not give him his entire payout. He also conveniently upped the company's fire insurance by almost 500% right before the buildings burned down, but there's nothing sketchy to see here. And in the insurance company's investigations of if he was in fact committing insurance fraud, found that they could find no paper trail to where he got his initial capital investments to buy the company and give the loan in the first place. Once again, never having to face any consequences for his actions, the company kept trucking along, and he would eventually start another company called Directed Electronics Incorporated, which also made car alarms, most notably the Viper system. And this section of his history brought me my most favorite line in his entire Wikipedia page. It said, Issa used his knowledge of the weaknesses of automotive security to develop anti-theft systems. And I'm certain that they're referring to his time, running the company Steel Stoppers, but it's funny because of, all the grand theft auto. Then with the money he got from all that, he got into real estate and just became ungodly stupid wealthy. With that wealth, he's like, what would be a good thing to start investing in? Buying elections. He started lobbying and then became California's biggest individual campaign donor by the mid-1990s. And then in 1998, he's like, I'm gonna run for the US Senate, and spent $10 million of his own money to lose the primary against somebody who raised $3 million. However, it wasn't all wasted money, because the name recognition he received during that primary race helped him to glide into California's 48th congressional district 2 years later. A district that, despite claiming he was going to retire in 2018, he has remained in ever since. Now, I'm not gonna lie, credit where it's due, a lot of the legislation that he has introduced and some of it that's gotten passed has not been horrible. Notably, the Sexual Assault Survivors' Rights Act he introduced, which was signed into law by Barack Obama, Excellent legislation. The Digital Accountability and Transparency Act of 2013, also signed into law by Barack Obama. This made federal expenditures a bit more transparent. He's gotten a couple of bills passed that help protect artist royalties and intellectual property. He tried to get a bill passed that would have streamlined the process and made it easier for people to submit freedom of information requests and make it more difficult for the government to deny those freedom of information requests. Credit where it's due. There's certainly some solid legislation he's put forth that I cannot take away from him. That said, when it comes to voting on other people's legislation and leveraging his power in various congressional committees, it's not so great. We'll give him credit. He was one of only 46 Republicans to vote in favor of the Respect of Marriage Act, which codified gay marriage. But beyond that, it's not great. He's been a real strong vocal supporter of abortion bans. He criticized the federal government's support of 9/11 first responders for like health issues and stuff, saying that they didn't experience, a dirty bomb or anything. Why are we helping them? That should be a state problem. No joke. The guy literally is just basically like, fuck those first responders. Definitely wasn't a national event that just happened to take place in New York, and those first responders certainly didn't suffer any long-term mental or physical health problems from that. While not going quite as full deep throat on an orange Tic Tac as some of his colleagues have gone, condemning Donald Trump's comments about groin grabbing and all, he never rescinded his endorsement of Trump. He voted against impeachment both times and voted against the formation of a committee to investigate January 6th. He's teetered on climate change denial and has definitely spread debunked climate change conspiracies like ClimateGate, not only railed against legalizing marijuana, but voted against even reclassifying it to a lower class of drug. He voted in favor of the Patriot Act, voted to defund Planned Parenthood and take women's health care away. He's led the charge against trying to overturn the ACA. And speaking of Obamacare and Obama in general, if he wasn't directly leading the charge, he was pretty much involved in all of those frivolous, stupid Republican congressional investigations through the entire Obama administration. In fact, he even had his own Benghazi investigation in addition to all of the other Benghazi investigations, and he was so fucking annoying about it that he got escorted out of one of the other Benghazi investigation depositions. Despite the very small handful of redeeming pieces of legislation and votes over his now, 24-year-long career, the dude is just a slimy, conniving crook whose only interest in public service is how it can service him. And while the people of California's 48th have been seemingly fine with re-electing this con man and crook for the past 2.5 decades, his seat has become increasingly more vulnerable, especially as he continues to assault women's access to healthcare and women's rights in general. So now, speaking to the 48's finer residents, Issa expressed his desire to retire back in 2018. Why don't you all do him a favor and help Darrell open that door in 2024?